Look at the smartphone in your hand right now. That sleek black screen looks like the pinnacle of human civilization. We've always been taught that technology evolves in a straight line upward, from caves to the wheel to steam engines, then computers, and finally the internet. A steady journey of progress, step by step. And because of that, we've come to see our ancestors as primitive people who could only build pyramids and rarely lived past 30. But what if that view is completely wrong? What if the ancient world wasn't primitive at all? What if, thousands of years before us, they had already touched technologies that we are only now beginning to understand? Deep underground, beneath the ocean floor, hidden in layers of time, archaeologists keep uncovering artifacts that force history to be rewritten, devices that appeared thousands of years before their supposed time. Mechanisms operating on physical principles that modern science has only recently discovered. Computers before Christ. Batteries capable of generating electricity when most of the world was still using sticks and stones. Today, we're going to travel back through time to explore 6 astonishing ancient inventions, all of them real. The machine that heard earthquakes. Ancient China. Close your eyes and travel back nearly 2,000 years. China, in the 2nd century AD, a vast empire stretching thousands of miles from the snowy mountains of the north to the fertile red rivers of the south. Massive city walls, endless rice fields, silk, and merchants crowding the Silk Road. But hidden beneath that prosperity was a constant fear. Earthquakes, no warning, no signs, no mercy. In just minutes, an entire city could become a pile of rubble. Homes collapsed. City walls split open. Cries of grief echoed everywhere. And at that time, people did not see this as a simple natural phenomenon. They believed it was a warning from heaven. If the earth shook, it meant the emperor had done something wrong. The mandate of heaven was wavering. A dynasty could fall. So every earthquake did more than kill people. It threatened political power. A powerful quake in a distant region could ignite rebellion. The imperial court needed to know early, needed to respond quickly, needed to send aid to maintain the people's loyalty. But how could they detect something invisible? In the grand hall of the imperial palace in Luoyang, there stood an object that left everyone puzzled. A gigantic bronze vessel, nearly as tall as a grown man. Its surface was carved with ancient patterns. Around its body were 8 majestic dragons, their heads facing the 8 directions of the compass. In the mouth of each dragon rested a heavy bronze ball. Below them, 8 metal toads waited with open mouths. If a ball dropped, it would strike with a loud clang that echoed through the hall. It looked like a ritual object, a mystical charm, rather than a scientific instrument. Its creator was Zhang Heng, an astronomer, mathematician, and engineer. But in the eyes of many officials, he was just a dreamer. How could a bronze jar possibly predict heaven's will? We don't even feel any shaking. How would it know? Laughter followed them whenever they walked past it. Zhang Heng did not argue. He simply kept adjusting the mechanism inside, day after day. Then, one morning, the palace was strangely calm. No wind, no trembling. The tea in the cups stood perfectly still. Suddenly, clang, a sharp metallic sound rang out. Everyone froze. One bronze ball had fallen. From the mouth of the dragon facing west, it landed neatly into the mouth of the toad below. Zhang Heng stepped forward, his voice steady. An earthquake has just occurred in the west. Send aid immediately. The officials burst into laughter. It's not even shaking here. How could there be a quake in the west? They thought he was making it up. But 3 days later, a messenger arrived on horseback. Clothes torn and covered in dust, face pale with shock. A western province had been devastated by a massive earthquake. The terrible news silenced the entire hall. All eyes turned to the bronze vessel. The object, once thought to be a joke, had heard the cry of the earth from hundreds of miles away. More than 2,000 years later, modern scientists finally understood its secret. No spirits, no magic, only pure physics. Inside was a heavy pendulum suspended freely. When faint seismic waves too small for humans to feel reached the vessel, the outer body vibrated slightly, But the pendulum, because of inertia, remained still. That tiny difference was enough to trigger a mechanical lever. The lever released a latch. The dragon's mouth opened. The bronze ball dropped, and the direction of the drop revealed the direction of the epicenter. A complete seismograph, built at a time when much of the world didn't even understand what science was. While many civilizations still believed earthquakes were caused by monsters beneath the earth, Zhang Heng was listening to the planet through precise mechanics. He turned fear into data, turned chaos into information, and created the first earthquake detector in human history. Roman nanotechnology, the Lycurgus Cup. In the heart of modern London, where red buses roll through rain-slick streets and crowds flow past centuries-old buildings, there is a place that feels almost untouched by time, the British Museum. Inside its silent galleries, warm yellow lights fall softly on glass cases, and thousands of years of history lie still, as if asleep. Among statues, mummies, bronze swords, and ancient inscriptions, there is one object so small that many visitors walk past it without noticing. A glass cup. No gold, no jewels, no precious stones. It fits easily in the palm of a hand. At first glance, it seems ordinary. A dull green color, cloudy, like mossy water. Just another ancient artifact, faded by time. But step a little closer, and when the museum guide switches on a light behind it, something extraordinary happens. Light passes through the glass, and right before your eyes, the green disappears. The cup begins to glow, not gold, not orange, but a deep, vivid red, dark crimson, transparent like a ruby, as if fire were burning inside it. The same object, the same material, yet two completely opposite colors, as if it were enchanted. The ancient Romans thought so too. The cup is known as the Lycurgus Cup, carved with a scene of King Lycurgus entangled in vines for offending Dionysus, the god of wine. At lavish banquets held by the elite, it was placed at the center of the table, candlelight flickering inside. Guests watched the cup change color and gasped. They whispered that it had a soul. Some believed it could detect poison. If wine were tainted, the cup would react. And in a world where poisoning was a common method of assassination, that belief made it more than decoration. It was a protector, a talisman, a royal treasure. For centuries, the secret of the cup was lost. Medieval glassmakers tried to copy it and failed. They added minerals, dyes, metals. All they produced were ugly colors. No one could recreate the magic until 1990, when modern science stepped in. Researchers removed an almost microscopic sample and examined it under an electron microscope. They expected to see paint or some strange chemical coating. What they saw instead stunned the entire laboratory. Inside the glass were millions of tiny metal particles, gold, silver, but not ordinary fragments. Their size was almost unimaginable, just a few dozen nanometers across, thousands of times thinner than a human hair. So small, they were nearly the size of viruses. At this scale, metal no longer behaves like metal. It follows the rules of quantum physics. When light hits these particles, electrons on their surface vibrate intensely. This phenomenon is called plasmon resonance. It absorbs certain wavelengths and allows others to pass through. The result: reflected light green, transmitted light red, an incredibly sophisticated optical effect, something that today we can only manufacture in nanotechnology laboratories. Used for biological sensors, blood tests, virus detection, cancer diagnostics, and yet the Romans achieved it 1,600 years ago. The most shocking part? The ratio of gold to silver is nearly perfect everywhere in the glass. Not an accident, not a coin falling into molten glass. It was deliberate craftsmanship. They ground metal into ultra-fine dust, mixed it evenly into molten glass, controlled particle size with astonishing precision. We don't even know what tools they used. While we rely on lasers, centrifuges, and vacuum chambers, they had furnaces and hammers. And yet the result looks like 21st century technology. Perhaps to them, it wasn't science, just a trade secret, a recipe passed from master to apprentice. But by accident, they touched the atomic world. They crossed the boundary where matter behaves strangely, where gold stops being gold and becomes light. And when you stand in the museum today, watching that small cup glow deep red in the darkness, you realize something unsettling. Maybe our ancestors were never less intelligent. They simply knew different things. Things humanity forgot for thousands of years and is only now struggling to rediscover. The Baghdad Battery. The year was 1936. The Iraqi desert. Hot winds swept across yellow-brown mounds, carrying fine dust that clung to the clothes and hair of an archaeological team. There were no pyramids, no towering temples, just the quiet remains of an ancient settlement buried beneath sand. Broken pottery, fired bricks, old bowls and plates. Most of the artifacts were unremarkable, the kind of objects found at almost any excavation, until one worker struck something small. A clay jar, rough, dull brown, less than 15 centimeters tall. It looked exactly like a simple container for spices, the kind of thing someone might toss aside without a second glance. But when the archaeologist picked it up, he sensed something unusual. The mouth of the jar had been sealed with ancient bitumen, as if someone had deliberately closed it. He carefully removed the seal, looked inside, and froze. It wasn't empty. There was a metal tube made of copper. Inside the copper tube was an iron rod, two different metals, not touching directly, separated by insulating material. The structure immediately reminded him of something familiar, a battery. But that was impossible, because the surrounding pottery dated back more than 2,000 years. The first battery in textbooks was invented by Alessandro Volta in 1800, a time gap of nearly 18 centuries. News spread quickly, the media exploded, scholars were divided. It's just a scroll container. It's a ritual object. It can't possibly be a battery. But scientists decided to test the idea. They built an exact replica: clay jar, copper cylinder, iron rod. Then they poured in vinegar, waited a few seconds, and measured. The needle moved, 0.5 volts. It really did generate electricity, a weak current, not enough to light a bulb, not enough to power machines, but enough for something very specific: electroplating. If you place a copper object in a gold salt solution and connect it to a small electrical source, gold ions will slowly coat the surface, layer by tiny layer, until it looks like solid gold, shiny, brilliant, indistinguishable to the naked eye. Experiments showed that just a few Baghdad batteries connected together would be enough. And suddenly, everything made sense. Imagine you are a jeweler 2,000 years ago. Gold is incredibly expensive. But customers want jewelry that looks luxurious. Instead of casting an entire piece from gold, you use a cheap copper core, then apply magic to turn the surface into gold. No explanations needed, just a secret formula. Pour a sour liquid into the jar, connect metal wires, wait a while, and a miracle happens. Copper becomes gold. To them, it wasn't electricity, not electrons, just a trade trick, a craft secret passed down through generations. But through modern eyes, it is electrochemistry. The same principle as the battery in the phone in your hand, the same principle behind every battery in the world. What chills scientists isn't the voltage, it's the idea. Someone in the ancient world realized that two metals plus an acidic liquid produce invisible energy, a force the eye cannot see, but one that can move metal itself. They touched electricity before the word electricity even existed. Think about that. When Europe was still in darkness, when most of humanity still relied on fire for light, in Mesopotamia, someone may have held a tiny captured lightning bolt, not to power cities, not to run machines, but simply to make jewelry more beautiful, an invention that could have changed the world, limited only by everyday needs. And then, over time, the formula was lost. The craftsman died. The secret vanished. Humanity forgot electricity for nearly 2,000 years more. Until Volta rediscovered it from scratch. Maybe history isn't a steady march of progress. Maybe we are simply rediscovering what our ancestors once knew, losing it and finding it again, as if human knowledge is always buried beneath the sand, waiting for someone to dig it up, just like that small clay jar. The first computer, the Antikythera mechanism. The year was 1901, the Aegean Sea, dark blue water, cold and so deep that sunlight faded into pale silver streaks. A group of sponge divers were searching for their usual catch. They were not archaeologists, just men trying to make a living from the sea. But that day, one of them saw something strange. Beneath layers of sand and seaweed was the massive shadow of an ancient ship, a shipwreck. They reported it. Greek authorities sent an expedition to investigate. When the first artifacts were brought to the surface, people were stunned. Bronze statues, ceramic vessels, jewelry, exquisite works of art, a true treasure of the ancient world. But among all those magnificent objects, there was one item that looked worthless, a lump of corroded metal, rusty, broken, like a useless stone. It was tossed into a corner of a museum storage room. For months, no one cared, until one day, a museum worker accidentally dropped it. The crusted mass split open, and inside, something glinted in the light. Teeth, bronze gear teeth, perfectly cut, precise down to the millimeter. No one could believe their eyes. Gears? Inside a shipwreck, over 2,000 years old? Impossible. At that time, humanity didn't even have mechanical clocks. Scientists began carefully dismantling it, piece by piece, layer by layer. And the more they saw, the more chills ran down their spines. Not just one gear, but dozens. Large and small, interlocking like a complex machine. Some had more than 200 teeth, carved with astonishing precision, almost no margin of error. This was not decoration, it was machinery. They used X-rays, 3D imaging, and slowly reconstructed its original form, a wooden box the size of a book. The front had circular dials. The back had multiple smaller dials. On the side was a small hand crank. Turn the crank, and the gears inside began to move, slowly, smoothly, with the precision of a Swiss watch. And then the miracle happened. Pointers on the dials began to shift. One followed the cycle of the Sunday, another tracked the moon. Others represented Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, all moving according to real astronomical cycles, as if the sky itself had been miniaturized. Inside a box, they ran the calculations. The results shocked the scientific world. It could predict full moons, new moons, solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, the Olympic cycle, even the 19-year Greek calendar cycle. It didn't just display information, it computed it, mechanically, using mathematics encoded in gear ratios. In other words, this was a computer, a fully mechanical computer, built around 100 BC, more than 1,400 years before similar astronomical clocks appeared in Europe. Think about that. When much of the world believed gods pulled the sun across the sky, somewhere in the Mediterranean, a craftsman was building a device that could precisely calculate the motion of the cosmos. Not magic, not prophecy, but pure mechanics, pure mathematics, using only bronze, wood, and intellect. An ancient astronomical laptop. It may have belonged to an astronomer, or a ship captain, or a wealthy scholar. Someone who needed to know exactly how the sky would look before setting sail, before holding rituals, before planting crops. But then the ship sank. The box disappeared beneath the sea, and with it, an entire technological tradition. Humanity forgot how to build something so complex. For nearly 1,500 years, until mechanical clocks reappeared in the Middle Ages, history seems to have been reset, as if we once reached a peak and then dropped everything into the deep. And only by chance, a poor diver brought it back into the light. Today, when engineers study the Antikythera mechanism, they still admit, even with modern tools, achieving such precision is not easy, which raises a chilling question. If such a complex computer once existed, How many other technologies of the ancient world have been lost forever? Maybe. Our ancestors were more intelligent than we imagine. It's just that history did not preserve the evidence. Except for one corroded lump of metal, lying silent on the seabed for 2,000 years, waiting to tell its story. Robots in the temple, hero of Alexandria. Imagine living in the 1st century AD. One afternoon, you walk up white stone steps into a massive temple, towering columns, thick incense smoke, firelight flickering across bronze statues. The air is solemn and filled with miracles. A priest approaches the altar. He lays down wood, lights a fire. The flames rise. People kneel, they pray. And then suddenly, boom, the giant bronze doors of the temple open by themselves, slowly, with a deep groan, as if invisible hands were pushing from within. No one touches them. No ropes, no guards, only fire. The crowd gasps. Some tremble. The gods have heard our prayers. The gates of heaven have opened. To them, it was divine power. But to a man in Alexandria, it was simply mechanics. His name was Hero of Alexandria, also known as Heron, an engineer, a mathematician, and perhaps the first robot maker in history. Hero did not believe in magic. He believed in pressure, in steam, in leverage, in the invisible laws of physics. Beneath that altar was no miracle. It was a system so clever it borders on unbelievable. When the fire burned, air inside a sealed chamber began to heat up. Hot air expanded, pressure increased. It pushed water into another container. The heavier water flowed downward, pulling a rope. The rope turned pulleys. The pulleys were connected to the temple doors. And just like that, the doors opened, fully automatic. No humans, no motors, only heat. A complete automation system, 2,000 years before the word automation existed. But Hero didn't stop there. His imagination went much further. He designed an automatic holy water dispenser. You drop in a coin. The coin's weight pulls a lever. A valve opens. Water flows out. When the coin slides off the plate, the valve closes. Exactly the same principle as a modern vending machine. It may have been the first vending machine in human history. In theaters, Hero created mechanical stages, using only ropes, gears, and counterweights. An entire play could run by itself. Statues moved, doors opened, characters flew through the air, thunder sounds roared, audiences watched, believing gods had descended. But in reality, everything was programmed with ropes wrapped around rotating wooden drums, like a giant music box, a form of mechanical code, a precursor to programming. He also built mechanical birds that sang. When steam passed through tiny pipes, they produced chirping sounds. Statues that poured wine, puppets that walked on their own, carts that rolled forward without being pushed. If you look with modern eyes, these were robots. Robots powered by air pressure. Robots powered by water. Robots powered by gravity. No electricity, no chips, no circuit, just pure physics. Yet they could move on their own, react, perform actions, enough to fool the human senses. Imagine you are an ancient visitor. You enter a temple. Doors open by themselves. Statues move. Metal birds sing. Water flows when you drop in a coin. What would you believe? Science or the gods? Hero understood that psychology perfectly. He wrote that mechanics can create effects that people will consider miraculous. He wasn't just an engineer, he was a director of wonder. But then, like many ancient marvels, this knowledge disappeared. The Library of Alexandria burned, blueprints were lost, machines broke. No one remembered how to build them. Humanity needed nearly 1,800 years to return to automation, to steam engines, to robots, to vending machines, to mechanical theater. All the things we think of as modern once existed in the dim light of a temple, under the hands of a Greek mechanic. Hero might laugh if he saw today's robots, because 2,000 years ago, he already made stone and bronze move like living beings, using nothing but heat and human ingenuity. The forgotten steam engine, the Aeolipile. This may be the most heartbreaking invention of all, not because it failed, but because it succeeded. Too early. So early that the world wasn't ready. Its name was the Aeolipial, a name that sounds like mythology, but its shape was incredibly simple. Just a hollow metal sphere, two bent tubes sticking out from the sides. Below it, a pot of water and fire. That's it. It looks more like a toy than an invention that could have changed history. Hero of Alexandria described it in his writings. He placed water in the pot, heated it, steam rose, flowed into the sphere, then shot out through the curved tubes, and suddenly the sphere began to spin, faster, faster still, until it became a blur. No one touched it. No ropes, no animals, only steam. If you look at it with modern eyes, you recognize it instantly. This wasn't a toy. It was the first steam turbine in human history. Based on the same principle as locomotive engines, thermal power plants, electric generators, jet turbines, the same principle that powers much of the modern world. Heat energy converted into rotational motion. Rotational motion used to do work, a simple idea, but the foundation of the Industrial Revolution. If someone back then had attached gears to the spinning axle, connected it to a hammer, or a mill, or a cart, history might have taken a very different path. Imagine it. Ancient Rome with mechanical factories, steam-powered ships, self-moving vehicles on stone roads, automated looms. The world could have entered the Industrial Age. 1,500 to 1,700 years earlier, medieval Europe might have had electricity, engines, perhaps even flight. But that didn't happen. The Aeolipial never became real machinery. It was seen only as a demonstration device, a scientific curiosity, something to impress students. Why? The answer wasn't technical. It was economic. Look at the Roman world at that time. They had millions of slaves, war captives, enslaved peoples, humans treated as tools. Labor was so cheap it was almost free. Need grain ground? Use slaves. Need stones hauled? Use slaves. Need a temple built? Use slaves. Why invest effort in building machines when you already have living engines? A metal machine is expensive. A human being is cheap and easily replaced. In such a society, science had no pressure to advance, no demand, no incentive, no reason to invent. So the Aeolipile, the device that could have transformed civilization, was set aside, left to gather dust in books. Like an amusing toy, time passed. The Roman Empire fell, libraries burned, knowledge was lost, humanity slipped into centuries of stagnation. Not until the 18th century did James Watt reinvent the steam engine. And only then did the Industrial Revolution truly begin. But think about it. If Hero had been born 1,700 years later, he might be remembered as the father of the machine age. If society back then had faced labor shortages, if workers had been expensive, if automation had been necessary, today's world might look completely different. Sometimes, science doesn't fail for lack of intelligence. It fails because the world doesn't need it. Economics, politics, society, they decide which inventions survive and which are forgotten. The Aeolipile didn't die because it was weak. It died because humans were cheaper than machines. A strange tragedy where progress was killed by convenience. And maybe the story of human history isn't about what we invent, but about what we once had. 6 artifacts, 6 scattered fragments of the past. But when placed side by side, they tell the same story. History is not a straight line upward. It is not a continuous journey from ignorance to civilization. It is more like a spiral. There are moments when humanity reaches great heights. Then wars happen, empires fall, libraries burn, knowledge disappears, and the spiral turns backward. We begin again, slowly, step by step. Machines that could hear earthquakes, cups that changed color through nanoparticles, electric batteries hidden in clay jars, astronomical computers made of gears, robots powered by steam and air pressure, a forgotten steam turbine. All of them tell us one thing: Ancient people were not naive. They were intelligent, creative, and understood nature far more deeply than we often imagine. Perhaps we are not inventing anything entirely new. We are simply rediscovering things that once existed, remembering knowledge that was buried beneath sand. That realization is chilling, because if those great civilizations could lose everything, what guarantees that we won't? Who knows, 5,000 years from now, someone might dig up a shattered smartphone, a rusted circuit, a black screen, and wonder, did the ancients truly understand the power of this object? Or was it just a ritual device? With religious meaning, history may repeat itself, but only if we forget. So, value knowledge today. Protect it, record it, pass it on, because history has proven one very cruel truth. Creating knowledge is incredibly hard, but losing it is frighteningly easy.